Welcome to the Sporting Shadows podcast. I'm Peter, and this podcast is talking about fringe sports, sports in the shadow of other mainstream sports who get a lot more coverage. Today, I'm joined by Georgia Hellerman, international netballer. How are you doing, Georgia?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Great. We're in here today. I want to pick your brains on everything netball. I want to find out exactly your journey and what it means to be a netballer today. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about your journey into netball? How did you get started and what made you stick with netball?
Yeah, so my mum played netball for Wales, so I kind of always grown up in that environment. So as soon as literally I could walk, my mum got me straight into netball. I probably started when I was about 3, I reckon, and then went into club, just played for that for all my life, and then eventually I got picked up in trials, and yeah, it just all shot off from there, really.
Would you say it's quite common to start that early, or is it sort of thing that you get into during your later school years?
I think most people start later on. If you ask most international netballers, I think they start when they're 10, but because my mum obviously grew up in that environment, she wanted to get me straight into it as much as possible. She wanted to get me straight into sports. So growing up, I did every sport you can imagine, just to see what it can do, because my dad was really sporty as well. So it was just a sporty household, really.
Did you ever have a clash between what sports your dad wanted you to play and what sports your mum wanted you to play?
My dad really wanted me to do swimming. I don't know why. I think he just looked at me and thought maybe I could be a swimmer. I definitely couldn't be a swimmer.
Why'd you say that?
I don't know. I just didn't think. My dad, when we were little, he'd make sure that was the first thing I ever wanted us to do was swim. Just this is because it's a good life skill to have, really. So when we go on holiday, he'd make sure he'd pick coins in the water and make sure we could go and dive into it before he could leave us alone in there. So maybe he thought, well, from that she could be a swimmer, but my mum was fixated on me being a netballer all my life.
And you went that way. So the incentives for swimming didn't quite woo you over enough to go and pursue it. No, fair enough. Do you have any sort of early memorable moments in your early days, well, especially when you were really young, playing netball, that made you sort of think, yes, actually this is something I really want to do?
I probably didn't take it seriously, I would say, until I was in comp, really, because that's when you start trialling for stuff higher level. So I think I first got into the Wales system when I was 12 years old, I think I was. So that's still quite young for people to get in there, I think now even. But it wasn't until then I actually thought, I could actually have a go at this. I could actually be quite a good netballer if I keep on going with this. So it wasn't until I got brought up into trials and stuff that I actually thought, maybe I got a shot in this. So once I got into Wales and I got into counties and franchises and stuff, it started to help build my confidence more and more throughout the years. And yeah, that's probably what's helped it a lot.
And I imagine your mum was pushing you a lot all the time.
My mum was really was you can do that, you can do it. She always let me explore other sports. So I did basketball for 10 years, I think. I played that for Wales as well. My mum actually, for a couple of years, wanted me to do that because she thought, you could do really well at this. But my heart was always with netball. So I was I want to do netball.
Was that just from the inspiration of your mum and what she'd achieved?
I think so. I think my mum, was almost, was always my role model growing up. And even though, she put me in that environment, I wouldn't say she ever, forced me into wanting to be a netballer, because when doing what I do now, you have to have some enjoyment, to be able to do it every day. Otherwise, you would just not enjoy it, really. So my mum made sure that all the time to make sure I'm still enjoying it and everything, because otherwise that's when injuries will occur, because you're I don't really enjoy doing this anymore. So growing up, I always made sure that I was trying out different sports as well to make sure that netball was something that I always wanted to do. So I think doing basketball for a few years as well as doing netball did make me think and be I actually really want to do this. And lots of the skills that I had learnt from basketball helped me in netball into how I play today. So I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, there's quite a few things. You talk about having that role model as well, so close to home, being actually in your family.
Yeah.
I wonder how many young girls do you think don't have that role model, or have that role model somewhere else, and is obviously maybe an important player, but not so close to home. Do you think that's important, having someone so close?
No, I do. I think I'm definitely lucky that I've had my mum all my life to look up to and to help guide me into important decision making that I've had to make in my life. I think now that there is more exposure to netball, it is helping the younger generation to have more role models. But I think growing up, it was harder for people like me to get role models for netball because it wasn't showcased. It wasn't getting like the broadcast like it does today. So I'm grateful in the sense that I got to have that. But I know there's lots of people who are my age who have gone throughout the system without a role model. So I'm just grateful that I have that, to be honest with you.
Do you think you could yourself be a role model to future netball players? Well, you probably are now. I would want you to say that.
I hope so. That's what I try every day. Everything I do, I think about others as well. So I hopefully one day I'll be one, because I'd love to inspire the younger generation. But we'll keep working hard and hopefully I will be.
So how much has netball shaped your identity and sort of outside of sport been part of you?
I literally think my whole life I've literally lived, breathed netball. I think that netball has helped me as a person as well, come out of my shell, because obviously you're in a team sport, so you need to be able to communicate and make new friends and have all these different skills that you need in a team sport. So I think that element has really helped me grow as a person in confidence to be able to meet new people in the outside world. So when I go to even when coming to university, when making friends, I wasn't afraid to put myself out there and talk to people, whereas other people who may play individual sports may not have been as comfortable doing that. But I'm not afraid to really do that. And it's helped me make loads of friends throughout the world. So I am really grateful for that as well. And I think most of my friends are all netballers, to be honest with you, because every single day I do that. So yeah, I'm grateful for that.
Would you say you're quite an open person, and it sort of proved that netball, team sport, you've easily integrated? Do you think it's quite difficult for people who are quite individualistic to get involved with that, or would you say that it facilitates you just becoming an open and team player?
Yeah, I think doing team sports puts you outside your comfort zone if you do individual sports. So I think that people who do individual sports may find it more difficult to maybe do that. So growing up, I'm telling people now, growing up, I encourage loads of people to do team sports because I think it helps you with life skills so much than doing individual sports. That's what I think personally.
Do you think there's any way to influence that, bring that out, that sort of characteristic of being open and willing to adopt that team sport sort of ethos?
Yeah, that's my train of thought then. Yeah, I definitely think maturity, as you grow up, will help you come out your comfort zone more. But again, I do think that being in a team sport, I think most parents will probably encourage you, as a young child, you probably were encouraged to do more team sport to help with your communication skills. And then once you've got that, then it's then much easier to go into individual sports, because then I think that helps you. It depends what industry you really want to work with in the future as well, I think. For what we're doing now, you need to be able to have lots of teamwork and skills, lots of communication, everything. So I think that growing up in the sport team industry has helped me to do what I want to do in the future. So I think it all depends on that as well. But I definitely think maturity as you grow and come into different environments, going even to university probably helps you come out of your comfort zone, because most people come out, go from a small town, going to this big city, in London or something, going to university there, and then having to put themselves out there and be uncomfortable. I always go by the motto, to be comfortable, you need to be uncomfortable first to be able to grow. And I think that's the same with life and the sport, with anything, to be honest with you.
And again, we spoke a lot about it being a team sport. How is that atmosphere, being a team? How have you seen that evolve throughout your life and your career?
I love it. I love being in a team sport. I couldn't imagine not being in a team sport. I think that, like I said earlier, it shapes my identity, and I think that it's helped me grow into making new friendships. Like, I have friends who are in North Wales, I have friends in America, like I have friends all over the world just from playing netball. And I think that as you get older as well, you make more friends from doing that as well, because people start to respect you more from sticking to your sport. And I find that people are, like, it's hard to believe, but I find people are much nicer now in the environment. Like, when I've trained now and gone into my next generation team in Dragons, people are so nice in there, and they're all over like the world as well, and they're so nice. So I think being a team sport has really like helped that, and I just love it.
And we'll touch upon the next gen, the new league, under 23 league, soon enough. But in regard to netball now, what would you say makes it unique? Because again, you play basketball as well.
Yeah.
You've got that sort of contrast and similarities.
One of my pet peeves is people always saying that netball is basically basketball without the dribble. The amount of times I've heard that in my life is ridiculous. They ask, "Oh, what is netball? Is it basically you just not dribbling and not everyone can shoot?" And I'm like, no, it's so much more like to it. But unless you watch it or unless you like play it, you don't understand. Like, one of the boys in our class, like Alad, I was speaking to him about it, and he was like, you never understand how much skills go into it until you play it. So that's one of my pet peeves already from people saying that.
You had to defend it quite a lot?
Yeah, I definitely have. And I think as well because it's seen as just a female sport as well. And it's only recent, like throughout the years, that males have started to compete in it more. I think people have kind of like segregated netball because they're like, oh, it's just a women's sport. Whereas now it's becoming both. And then hopefully in the future become in the Olympics or something because it's both.
Yeah, we see that a lot. That's what I wanted to talk about, the uniqueness of it and the perception. I suppose, yeah, you touched on it. A lot of people will have the perception it's a girls' sport, it's a women's sport. Yeah. I'm not really going to watch that. And we may see that that's reflected in the kind of viewership and the audience it gets. But have you ever felt that at times where you've sort of felt marginalised in the sport in terms of it's just something for the women to play?
Yeah, I suppose I didn't really think about it until I've gotten older. Like, when you're growing up, you just kind of do the sport because your parents put you into it, and just you don't really think about all the behind the scenes stuff. And it wasn't until I was probably in comp, and then people are like, oh, like, especially some of the boys who want to go there, oh, you can't play that, that's a girl's sport. Whereas, like, no, if anyone wants to play it, they can. Like, I don't see it as just a girl's sport, I see it as everything. And I did my diss on this as well because I was like so passionate about the subject. I was like, no, like, everyone can do this sport, and I think it just needed the exposure and that someone to step in and say, no, like, everyone can do it, they can. And I think Australia and New Zealand have done it really well to integrate the professional side of male sport into women's sport now, and now it's coming to England as well. Like, you see so many more men's netball teams now over the years, whereas we never had that before. So I'd love for more male to compete in that, and especially make the exposure so younger people who are males who want to have a go at the sport can have a go at it and they won't be judged. Because I think that's more of the issue, is them feeling like they're going to get judged for doing it because it's classed as a female sport, even though it's not.
Do we just think it's quite misunderstood then?
What, netball? Yeah, 100%.
At times, is it almost seen as the case of it's kind of the opposite. It's had the opposite development to most sports, where a lot of sports have been male dominated, and they've brought in women to play, and they've made it more balanced. And now netball's sort of been the opposite, where it's been led by women for so long, and that's been balanced. I
think because it's the only sport you would really think about in your head that if someone asked you to name a female sport, normally the two they'll name is netball and gymnastics. But men's gymnastics is like taken off already. Like, you have so many amazing stars in that. But because netball hasn't necessarily done that, they put it in their own category because it hasn't had that. But because it hasn't had that exposure, you will never know that it could have been like that. So I think that when it starts to get more exposure now, it will help them people to be like, oh, I can do that. But it needs to be broadcasted more to allow that.
Yeah. It's just something we touched on a few weeks ago with the Commonwealth announcement.
Yeah.
When someone said women's sport and they announced lawn bowls, that's something I probably
Yeah.
would have thought of, because in the village where I'm from, it's mostly women who play lawn bowls. But that's another point. But in regard to that, yeah, it's in the Commonwealth. Are you probably thinking about that? What's the plan with you now?
I would love to. My aim is like when I first started the sport, I always like watched it on TV and thought like I want to do that. I want to be in the Commonwealth Games. I want to play in the Super League, and I'm at the age now where I'm starting to try and push into making that transition. And it's hard, don't get me wrong, but because I've always dreamed about it, I'm determined to do it. So hopefully I can compete in the Commonwealth Games, whether it's the next one or even the next one after. I would love to be able to do that. So I'm just working hard at the moment, taking each step as it comes and each opportunity as it comes. So, yeah.
And of course for Wales it would be, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, for Wales, yeah.
And again, so we spoke about Next Gen earlier. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so they built this Next Generation League for people who... So there's always been a gap in between the senior levels of Cardiff Dragons and under 21s, because it went straight from under 21s to Dragons. And that's when there's been people, so my age now, who are dropping out of netball. So you've got talented netballers who aren't getting an opportunity because there's so many of them and aren't getting an opportunity to come up yet. So allowing this league now is like the step in the middle of the 21s and the seniors, to allow them then to go into the senior level and be a more flowing transition as well. So I trialled for that and got in, and I'm so grateful for that opportunity, because it feels like the next step as well. And I feel like I'm that much closer into getting hopefully into that senior team. But you get treated just like the seniors as well, like you're in a professional environment. So it's exciting. I think it allows much more fluidity as well throughout the system. So I think it's a great opportunity for people.
Yeah, and very well done for getting selected. I think we'll give some context first to, of course, you mentioned the Dragons. That's the team here in Cardiff Dragons. Used to be Celtic.
Yeah, used to be
Dragons,
Celtic.
right?
Yeah.
And I think it's worth giving some context to NSL, the Netball Super League. That's the main, sort of the Premier League of netball here in the UK. And in some respects, is it semi-professional or is it fully professional? It's not quite the same as New Zealand and Australia's.
No, it's not quite the same as Australia and New Zealand. They are trying to make it professional, and it's like it's almost there, but it's not quite there yet. It's on the cusp.
How much further do you think it will need?
I think this year will help it a lot.
Okay. To
expose it more, and it was on Sky Sports. Like that was a huge thing for netball this year. All the announcements on Sky Sports. So I think just that announcement alone helped grow netball enough then. So I think that throughout this year now, when the matches start getting showcased more, it will attract more viewers, more sponsorships, and I think that will help then for it to become fully professional.
Yeah, because I've seen a bit of that back in, obviously, Bath. We spoke for Team Bath, and the revamp of the Netball Super League. And Sky Sports has helped a lot broadcasting it. They do the whole series, mostly internationals, rather than they take the go around with the feathers and the Vitality Roses. They kind of go everywhere with them. And so I think that has helped. Doesn't make a good point, because Sky Sports, again, dominate in the rest of the sporting world across all the sports they cover. So I think that, would you say that's a bonus that it's included as part of that wider sports community.
Yeah, like Sky Sports is always on like TV, and I've always dreamed about being on, like looking on TV, especially on Sky. Like it's the biggest platform, I would say, for sport. Like you always click on to go watch Sky Sports. So I think allowing that, I think it's Sky Netball now, so there's some channel on there. So allowing that, I think, will also help younger girls then to be like, oh, I can do that, which then like is a ripple effect, will then help everyone in the future for more sponsorship, more viewership, more people wanting to do it. So it's just everything that everyone does at the top then is just a ripple effect that in a positive way.
Yeah, because I was going to ask about, like, an NSL, like we said, it's semi-professional, almost there. Do you think that's an issue with netball, the funding aspect? How are we going to make more sponsorship and funding come into it? How do you think that might look in the next couple of years?
Yeah, like I said, I think that from it being on Sky now and BBC iPlayer, like all of them, it will help with more viewership. And even now with international matches, they've made them all online for people to watch, which that's just one step like ahead, like even more now, because that's allowing more viewership, more sponsors, and that's all it needed. And I wish it was done sooner, because we could have been probably like way ahead, but I understand it's like easier said than done. So I think England is definitely more ahead than Wales in that aspect, but I think that's just because they are a bigger country than us. So
and more teams.
And more teams, so they're allowed that. But I think Wales are starting to creep up now and getting their international matches on BBC iPlayer as well. So hopefully next step for their international matches will be on Sky Sports as well. So that'll help in Wales as well. And I think it's just helping little countries like us as well. Not a little country, but smaller than England. Helping us get more viewership and sponsorship. And then I think that will help the whole netball community as well then, as a whole, because everyone will kind of hopefully be on the same level to help each other out. So I think that'll help.
I like your point, the underdog country.
Yeah.
And again, the Dragons are the only team in Wales, right?
Yeah.
I think as we saw with the reboot of NSL, a lot of teams were lost because of arena sizes. And because, again, that's a funding issue. They want to make money. They want to bring fans in, of course. Do you think it's likely, or maybe unlikely, potentially we may see another team crop up in Wales at some point? If there's a big enough arena for another team, maybe Swansea?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I would. I hope so, because I think it would help more people in Wales want to compete, because lots of girls in Wales growing up, like me, haven't been able to have the opportunity necessarily to play in the NPL because Dragons hadn't been in there. So like me in previous years, I'd have to travel over the bridge to go and play for NPL all those years, which is hard, especially during uni, having to do uni all day, then travel 2 hours to like Bristol to go train, then come all the way back as well. That's hard for lots of people, and lots of people can't afford that either. So I think that allowing a team in Wales to be able to do this then encourages more people in Wales to do it, and then hopefully by the more attraction and the more sponsorship and the more viewership, like everything else, there'll hopefully be another team. Could be in Swansea, could hopefully maybe in North Wales if more people go in there. But hopefully, you can only hope, really.
And that's what I mean. Part of this podcast is talking about the nicheness of sport and accessibility. And again, a big part of it is grassroots ultimately. And we can only hope that another team will pop up somewhere with the funding or the development. North Wales would be quite a good place. Yeah. Because the nearest there is probably Manchester.
Yeah, I think it would be.
The next.
So they're having to travel all the way. Yeah. Still over there, but I think it would. I would probably say it'd be better for it to go up north because they have nothing over there. So I think it'd be better up there if they had it, because there's girls who are in Wales and me now who travel all the way from Bangor to a Wales netball session, which is like I don't even want to think how many hours that is, like a round trip. So I think allowing them probably more up there would help them a lot.
And what does that look like at the grassroots then of netball? Are there people trying to integrate it more in communities and things like that?
Yeah, I think that it's definitely improved over the years. I think the opportunities so my sister plays netball, and the opportunities that she's getting now, I don't think I got when I was younger. Like even now in the Wales system, they had an under-15s team. When I was in there, we never had an under-15 team. They went straight to under-17s. So allowing under-15 team now is already allowing the younger generation to strive to get in earlier and to develop earlier. The younger you are and the younger you are in the system, the more time you have to grow as a netballer. So I think allowing more stuff when you are younger definitely helps you. So even in counties as well, that'll help you more. And I think they've got like national region academies, they call them, around Wales, which then the national academy coaches go look at. So then that exposes more players to allow them to grow in there. So I think that we're doing the right things that will help the younger generation, but I think we could probably just do it a little bit more across Wales.
And even in your case, when you started so young, do you think if you were starting at that same age now, you would be a lot more ahead, would you say, or know a lot more?
I would hope so. If I was back then we probably didn't have the facilities that we do now. So I think everyone my age would probably be still a step behind. But I think the people who are there's people who are 17 now who are doing stuff that I wouldn't have been able to do until I was 20. It's incredible. Like the stuff there's a girl who's in my Dragon squad now. I think she's just turned 18 years old.
Wow.
And she's in the next generation team. It's insane. And it just baffles me. But she's so good because she's had that exposure growing up and she's been with top coaches and just been allowed to train with top athletes, which then just helps you grow. Like me even being around girls now who have been in the Super League setup is helping me grow so quick. But because we need that sooner, then that'll help everyone and it'll just be more competitive as well, which is good because you always want to have competition.
Yeah, 100%. And we see that ladder of development. You start off and you work your way up. And again, NSL is probably one of the biggest things competitively in this country that you can aspire to be in. And then above that, you'll play nationally, internationally for your national team, right?
Yeah, so it depends. So you obviously want to pay for your country. Yeah. So that's always I'd love to pay for seniors for my country. That is amazing. And then for my franchise in Dragons, I think the top aim, and I think every netballer has dreamed about this, is playing in Australia. I would love to be able to play in Australia. I think that's when you've not necessarily made it, but have made your younger self proud.
Yeah.
So if I ever had that opportunity to play in Australia, I think I'd be like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I think in a franchise perspective that they are trying to match what people would feel like if they were playing in Australia, if that makes sense. So I think that's happened as well, but my dream would always to play overseas. I'd love to be able to do that. So being able to play in these top environments is just insane.
Why is it so much bigger over there then, would you say?
I think because they started sooner.
Okay.
Just from them having more sponsorship, more deals, and we're just a couple of years behind. And we are getting there. I don't think that we'd probably ever be in level with them.
Okay.
Maybe I could be wrong.
Be hopeful.
Hopefully we can.
If you want to be over there anyway, then.
Yeah. But they've always been a couple of years ahead. They're professional now. They get paid. There's girls who are playing the Super League now who still need to do a full-time job and they're still in uni and everything. So I think that in a couple of years we'd be able to do that. And I think, again, allowing this new league and this new setup will help that. But I think that they are still a couple of years behind.
And do you think that matters? Again, we were talking about incentives early on with your dad putting coins in water to make you go and have a swim. Do you think it's important to have that in place for young girls who look to have a career in netball, have that in place to say, okay, I can actually work full-time doing my netball career. I don't have to get another job to support myself.
Yeah, I think that allowing that exposure to that opportunities will make people younger be like, oh, I want to do that. And it's more of a case of people sticking by it. I think from my first netball year up in Wales that I played for, I think that only 3 of us still play, properly, international level, which is insane to think about. So I think that it's a case of people sticking by it as well. And I think that will help then in the future to keep these talented players in the system. And then that'll help it, there'll be a ripple effect again and help in the future.
Do you think it would be the case that, I don't know about you when you were younger in school, if you remember the careers people, they say, oh, what do you want to be when you're older?
Yeah.
And maybe about 6 or 7 you say, I want to be a builder or an astronaut. Is it the case that, I doubt many people say I want to be X sport, I want to be a gymnast, I want to be...
Yeah.
Do you think eventually you could say, I want to be a netballer? I know I'm going to get paid for it, because at that age we don't really know much about money, do we? We don't know what the job is, we just know what our parents tell us.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I love that. I think that people seeing it more on TV, they'll think they could do that. You hear boys all the time going, oh, I want to be a footballer, I want to be a rugby player when I'm older, I want to play for like Man United, like and stuff like that. So for allowing more exposure and for people to see it when they're younger, then they can believe they can do it. And especially if people from their areas, like they've seen it, like if they see like me now and if I become professional, they'd be like, oh, Georgia like grew up in Wales, like she went throughout the system and she's got there, then I can do that too. I want to come through the system and do that too. So I think it's just about inspiring like the younger generation to believe in that they can do it, because once you believe you can do something, then you can achieve it.
Yeah. We had this chat earlier about public perception. You just touched on footballers. I want to be a footballer, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's the case that there's public perception. We know how much footballers are paid. It's an extraordinary amount of money. And you can apply that across many of the sports rugby players. I don't know how much they get.
Yeah.
But I suppose you probably don't hear people say, I want to be a netballer, because they don't know how much they make, or if at all they're making much money. We may hopefully see that become something else and say, yes, I know that's viable. But I think, I don't know if you'll agree, a big part of that is it's international recognition. We touched on broadcast and exposure. What would you say is the biggest part? You've got world champ and
for
netball.
So you've got World Cup.
That's it. And then Commonwealth
one.
for the Commonwealth countries.
But, Commonwealth.
And again, we touched on no Olympics.
No Olympics.
Ahead. Why is that?
Again, I think it's the case that because they don't see in the Olympics, they see the women's and the males have to kind of be equal to be able to be in the Olympics. And because, again, people class netball as a female sport, that they don't want to put it in the Olympics because it's just for females. So I think that, again, like I said earlier, allowing more males to believe they can see it. Like, you never see males netball on TV. Like, you hardly ever see. It's only now you see more Wales netball on TV. So I think allowing more males to compete in it then could become a ripple effect and allow us to get into the Olympics, because I think that'll be even more push. Because how much, like, when the Olympics are on, you see people, like, I'll go through the channels and I'll be watching like stuff that I wouldn't necessarily put on like before. Like, I'd go and change the channels and I'd be watching like badminton.
Yeah, and then shooting the next one, and archery or something.
And now I've watched like that sport, you're like, oh, like I enjoyed watching that. I want to watch that more. And that's all it takes. That little thing is all it takes for it to become a bigger picture. So even it being in the Commonwealth will allow more viewers to come watch that, and they'll be like, oh, I want to try that out, and go and try that out. So I think if we expose the male netball even more, I think that'll be that next step to go into Olympics will then become a ripple effect then, which will allow more exposure and more people to want to do netball, hopefully.
And I suppose I'm not going to ask you for a timeline on that, because again, if women's netball's only being really pushed a lot exposure-wise now, it might take a really long time.
Yeah, it's like,
to get there.
How long's a piece of string? Like, it's kind of that scenario.
It must be frustrating though. You see other sports sort of on similar levels where you might think of it as being a women's sport, or you might think of it being a men's sport. Say like basketball. When you typically say basketball, you might think of it as a men's sport because of the massive influence in America. Yeah, which of course is a huge women's side of it. Another one I always think about is volleyball as well. When you say volleyball, I mostly think of the women's volleyball, because that's mostly what people talk about during the Olympics. But then there's a huge men's volleyball community as well that competes, and maybe we see that sort of happen with netball. Yeah,
it's just the exposure for all those sports and allowing them to be seen as equal. Like, again, you only really see women's volleyball because they showcase women's volleyball. They never showcase really men's volleyball. And it's the same with netball. You only see, have you ever seen males netball on TV? If I put that like poll out, I'd probably say about 90% of people would say I haven't seen it on TV. Whereas women's netball, they would have. So I think that allowing people to see both males and females competing in the sport, then that'll help it grow even more. And especially like the sports that are seen as like not as much exposure, they're the ones that are suffering, really. because you see women's football on TV. I know it hasn't been like not as big as the males, but you do see it on TV much more now. Same with women's basketball a bit more now. You are seeing it a bit more now, but your likes of your netball, your volleyball, your badminton, like stuff like that, you hardly ever see, let alone them sports on TV, so let alone the male and the female side.
And like you said earlier, it's only Sky that really push it, and you look internationally. Other World Cup games, they're probably broadcast.
Yeah, I think they were on Sky. I'm pretty sure they were. But even if they're not on Sky, they'd be on YouTube. But people pushing them on socials will then show people that they can watch it, because like people don't even know that you could watch it. But even like an ad, a simple ad, just showing people that you can see it. But I think it's just a behind the scenes thing that people need to start exposing it more and more.
But ultimately, its inclusion in the Commonwealth is a huge part for it. Domestically, in the Anglosphere and the Commonwealth, considering how many sports were dropped from that, which has caused quite an outrage internationally.
I know, yeah. We were very lucky to be in there, and I think that England winning the Commonwealth Games a couple of years ago definitely helped that push. And I think this new generation league as well helped their argument's sake as well, and showing that people like are taking this seriously and want to improve the sport. So it is unfortunate for the likes of hockey that they have had to suffer in this, and I don't think any sport should have had to suffer really, because everyone wants the same thing really out of this. Everyone wants to showcase their sport that they love. So I think it's upsetting for obviously other sports. Obviously, I'm grateful because it's something that I can work towards, but it is disappointing for other sports, and I do feel for them as well.
Yeah, tell us about working towards that. Hopefully, how's that going to work? What's the plan?
I think it's just taking each opportunity I can, and I think that me being in the Next Generation League now and then hopefully playing as much as I can will then allow more people to see what I can do, and then that'll hopefully then make that next step. But I think it's just about every time I play giving my 100%, giving my all, and then everything then is like, that's all I can do. Like I say, in everyone else's hands then if they want to hopefully pick me or not, but I can only control what I can control, and that's just every time I go on the court and every time that I'm in training, everything, giving my 100% all, and that's what I try to do and be positive. PMA.
So will there be some feathered scouts coming to some of the games having a look?
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. I think there will be lots of people watching the new league.
Yeah, of course, it's being broadcast, I believe.
Yes, it's being broadcast on Sky. And it'll probably be on YouTube and BBC. So more people will watch that, and that'll help people as well, because they'll see younger people getting more exposure and to want to watch it as well. And yeah, I just think this whole Next Generation thing is just a great opportunity for the younger people who are always normally missing out. So I think that's great.
No, brilliant. I think we're reaching some time here, and I think we'll wrap it up. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us all about netball. Has been very insightful. I hope you can sort of work towards the Commonwealth and achieve all you can. You've had a head start probably to some people, so you can achieve what you put your mind to. Thank you so much for joining us. Join us next episode where we'll be looking at another sport in the shadow. Thank you very much.